Let's have a look at one last story. You mentioned Chelsea there in the last point you were making. Let's talk about Chelsea because it's not even in your agenda here, but I know we're going sideways to a fun story about Chelsea. Let's start off by being on message here and talking about moves. I know there is at least perhaps a defender link and a couple of other bits and bobs, but not the usual amount of stories around players with Chelsea, but there is a good Chelsea story that I know you're going to get to as well.
Yeah, we mentioned the strikers. Funnily enough, Chelsea have realised that buying 27 wingers doesn't really give you enough goals or a central point that you need. So we've already mentioned that one. And also they're looking at experiences at the back, as David Ornstein said. That's what they're targeting. Hence the move for Virgil van Dijk, which is still just funny to say, really, isn't it, at the end of the day? But Kim, the Bayern defender, there's quite a few suggestions in Germany that it's not obviously going brilliantly for him at Bayern for various reasons. He's had quite a few injury concerns, that Chelsea are linked with a few other clubs, but Chelsea is specifically looking for experience because they've got a lot of centre halves, but they tend to be young, don't they? Like Colwell, that a real experienced head, if you want to call it that. So that's something to keep an eye on. And the other player, I've not really watched Liga, and I'm not an avid watcher. I wouldn't lie for that for 1 second. But Chelsea's Andre Santos is on loan at Strasbourg. We're having a real charge. The Beluco company, which we'll come to as well, in Liga and doing well, pushing for the Champions League places. And this kid has shone, the Brazilian Andre Santos. So quite a few stories that Bayern Munich and others have asked about him as well, but expected to come back to Chelsea. Bayern have said if they're going to sell, but I just don't see it. It feels like he's going to come back. And then Chelsea have broke 3 records this season as well, Trev. Not for selling hotels to themselves, not from selling, youth teams, women's team, anything like that to themselves. Ticket prices. Chelsea had that famous £5,000 ticket, didn't they? And people talked about that sickeningly. They had the most expensive season ticket ever as well. And as Sky Sports News expose reported today, from digging, ticket prices inflated by like 250% to an American company who were just, offering top whack to, basically anyone who'll pay it. Who owns that company? We mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, people. Todd Boehly. This is part of just that. I kind of respect the hustle of Chelsea's accountant in terms of sell the hotel to themselves, sell the women's team to themselves, inflate the ticket prices, create a ticket agency under the owner's name. I kind of respect just the sheer hustle, the sheer grind that goes around it. I love it because it always gives us something every single summer. And even today, like the bits people who get stories around Chelsea are saying, there's still an expectation of an ownership divide, that Boehly sees it one way over the stadium and the tickets. And I can't pronounce, I think it's pronounced Begali. I'll probably be pronouncing that wrong. The other part owner sees it a different ways. And the Saudi investment there is juice in these Chelsea stories all summer. Hate the club, love the transfer dealings.
Every time. And can we also say respect to whatever legal team they've surrounded themselves with? Because everything they do sounds so illegal, and yet it's obviously fine. They just keep doing these mad things. Remarkable stuff. Let's finish with a quick tour around Europe and Real Madrid to start off. And of course, now that they can't win their 70 millionth European Cup, the stories about Carlo Ancelotti will start. I think they would have started even if he had won it, to be honest. Right. I think it's sort of like around about that time for Carlo. But one of the links ran during the week, and it was tied into that ridiculous story about the tour guide, That's what I couldn't understand. Did you hear the great news? Oh, Klopp to Real. How is that great news for Liverpool fans? I never got that. That was one aspect of that story that just made me think it was made up. But anyway, Klopp was linked with Real. Florian Wirtz, the aforementioned, has been linked with Real. And Young Ornstein has an angle too, including Xabi Alonso. So talk us through Real Madrid, because it could be relevant, very, very much so to Liverpool in terms of a certain player we were talking about earlier on.
Yeah, like you said, I don't think there was any real surprise when this story came out. We all knew the axe was going to fall on Don Carlo, probably if they'd won anyway. But yeah, it's probably more about the successor, isn't it? Because Don Carlo going to Brazil, I think everyone's expected this to happen. Xabi Alonso named, and even today, the Leverkusen board and their CEO coming out and saying, we have an agreement with Xavi for clubs he's played with before, a gentleman's agreement. Everyone just expects this to happen now, don't they? Everyone expects Xabi Alonso to be Real Madrid head coach by the start of the new season or by the summer. Which then also, and people still putting Klopp to Madrid, as Jurgen Klopp's agent has come out and said, no, Kloppo was very happy being this kind of Red Bull figure and just traveling the world, watching a bit of football, playing a bit of paddle tennis. Like, he's happy as he is right now. Being a granddad, as people are saying as well, like, just that's his lifestyle. He's happy. Fair play to him. He's more than earned it. But Florian Wirtz, as you mentioned, that is a player that's very much on the radar of Manchester City and Real Madrid. And Bayern Munich, I should say, as well. 3 big clubs for a talent that you can get, potentially. Now, Xavi coming across. Oh, look, where's Xavi right now? Leverkusen. So people are speculating a little bit. Does that tip the balance towards them and, following his head coach and all that, having a word in his ear? Who knows? But plenty of developments with Real Madrid going to happen. We shouldn't really be surprised, as you said. It's what they do. They win 80 billion European Cups and just change the manager pretty much every other season. When Don Carlo has 2 years there, we talk about tenure at Real Madrid, don't we? But it's just not the way it works.
Can I ask you, in all the trolling that you've done over the last couple of seasons that we've been doing this show, have you ever heard one story about Florian Wirtz to Liverpool? Because I find it weird that there hasn't been, and I haven't seen it.
Yes, Liverpool. I mean, he's a player Liverpool are fully aware of. They've watched, scout, all that type of thing. The problem is, for Liverpool, it's the fee. It's not a fee in our ballpark, is it? As soon as you go in north for that type of money, I mean, the thing about Liverpool is everyone's like, oh, we don't spend money. Well, they will in certain situations, like 75 million for Van Dijk, 60 odd million for Alisson. If they really think, this is big, this is going to change or move the needle completely, they will do it. The only thing we'd suspect at the moment they'd do it for is an elite striker. That's where all the links are, aren't they, really? I think Wirtz is a fabulous player, real potential, or good already, don't get me wrong. But for an attacking midfielder, that money, I think he'd already have to be producing insane numbers for Liverpool to be interested. And if he was producing those, which he's not far off, then the problem Liverpool have got is your Reals, your Barças, Manchester City. And in all honesty, Trev, they pay more than us, don't they, normally as well? So that's just why I've never really held any stock in us making a move for Wirtz.
Yeah, similar, and it's just because of the lack of stories too. Inter Milan, who've been flying in Europe, are also in the news, linked with Henrique. Talk to us about that story just before we move to our last two.
Yeah, I mean, Luis Henrique clearly wants out of Marseille. It's a bit of a troubled club, isn't it, at the moment? And linked with Forest not that long back and Newcastle, if they got the Champions League, which you thought, okay, that would be a great move for them. But how does young Luis see that? And this came out this week that, advanced talks now with Inter Milan. That's sounding more like it, isn't it? Yeah, France to Milan. Yeah, total package somewhere around 45 million euros. And you look at the other report, Bayern interested as well. With the greatest respect and not wanting to upset any Nottingham Forest fans or Newcastle, this always felt more plausible, didn't it? An Inter Milan, a Bayern Munich, and you know which one the lad would pick at the same time.
So before we finish with a little bit of chat about the Saudis and what they might be doing in terms of throwing money around, let's just finish with in terms of our tour of Europe with Nico Williams, who has been linked with Liverpool on several occasions and many other clubs as well. A highly sought after talent. Seems to be one of those ones that divide people wildly in comment sections, but interesting to see that the links with really high level clubs never stop for this guy.
No, it almost just feels like it'll always be the case, maybe because of Bilbao and where they sit. But that comes into the mix as well, because all the reports have been this summer that Barca are interested, but Barca are skint. We all know their situation. So it almost felt like Nico Williams is heading to the continent. And who's the biggest payers? The Premier League. It was going to be there. The couple of things that just keep coming up with Nico Williams when you get reports or you fish around, because Arsenal were touted by Ornstein, weren't they, and others as the favourites, but question marks around Nico Williams being a home bird. You know, could be going a bit homesick if he went to the Premier League, prefer to stay in Spain. And this story is coming out of Spain as well. If Bilbao get the Champions League, he wants to stay. I just wonder about Nico Williams, like, a talent, a lot of people would like him. It just has the feeling of a player. I mean, he's on big wages anyway, so you'd have to match those because he is the star at Bilbao, isn't he? You know, the Basque nation. But I'm not sure he's that keen to move particularly. It almost felt like if he moved, it would be because he's not getting Champions League football and because he'd help the club that way. He doesn't strike me as one who's remotely keen to test himself in the Premier League from all the stories. So I just wonder if Bilbao get Champions League, the smart money says he stays. And then how many times do clubs keep going back and knocking on for him? You just wonder.
Yeah, 100%. Last story then to have a look at what might be happening with Saudi Arabia and their league and their money. And I think we've covered very, very well on this show through the information you've got, the very real, almost actually reality situation of Nunez going to Saudi. And the fact that he was happy to do it as well, I found really interesting. Diaz too has been heavily linked, although the Barcelona story still hangs around with him. But what I find massively interesting now is that you said this earlier on about the possibly going for a younger age profile rather than the De Bruyne's. I heard these rumors as well of Kudus and, wait for it, the man on the screen there, Caicedo. Now, I'm sorry, but if they start digging into their bag and bringing out the kind of money you need to get those two boys to go, this is as well as our two lads, this is getting really back into the disruptor mode, which was so both interesting and unsettling when we started this show. So what do you have on those stories for us?
Yeah, again, we mentioned this about, it was about 4 or 5 weeks ago when we said, at the encouragement, and you can't ignore this, people, we said it 4 or 5 weeks ago, at the encouragement of Premier League clubs, there were Saudi reps at the last Premier League meeting. You know, when all 20 meet up to discuss rules and certain things, at the encouragement of Premier League clubs. And it works both ways because as much people talk about disruptors, there's a lot of Premier League clubs that will happily sell for top dollar, won't they, Trev? And will encourage bids and that money. So they were there as guests, just to be clear on that. And it's funny now how stuff's really, with the Club World Cup around the corner, starting to accelerate, isn't it? Like we talked about Nunez, as you said, Diaz, that offer. But Kudus, yeah, absolutely getting info from that the Saudi interest in him. If you can't see the screen, as a few are reporting, Chelsea's Moises Caicedo is interested as well there. The other thing to say is that we got the other day, Saudis want an experienced goalkeeper. When the Club World Cup starts, they still believe they need an experienced goalkeeper in the stick. So the stories with Ederson, maybe again it revitalizes in the worst way with Alisson at the same time as well. But I just don't know where this is going to go. And it's that Club World Cup that throws it into the mix. They have potential, even if it's just for a small window, to be real disruptors. And depending on how hard they want to go for this Club World Cup, even a bit of a paradigm shift as well. All we'd say really from the info we've got is don't discount more Saudi stories coming out very close to the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much right up our alley, this. And especially if it is an option for us to make big money for some lads who are looking to leave the Liverpool squad and will therefore free up cash for us to do lovely new signings. So we're all happy with that. We've gone long. We were 5 minutes late starting. That was my fault. So apologies if you're listening live or wanting to watch along live. But we are going to be back with you very soon. I'm going to leave the last word for today because we have gone long with young Davis there. Dave, tee up for the listeners as I say goodbye to them what we've got coming up before the end of the week.
Yeah, we did the full left back focus. We've got to talk right backs. When people are taking their shirts off, sticking it on a corner flag, giving interviews, when there's a youngster there, when there's young players being linked, there's manifestations and all sorts. You've got to tackle right backs this week and all the latest around that. So deep dive on that coming up at some point this week.
Well, I look forward to it as I always do. We will catch you then. Good luck for now.